Welcome back to Heartland Arms. I'm Michael. We're going to be covering home defense today. So there's defending your home, king of your castle, however you want to say it. Each state, and I'm going to start with each state, can have different laws based on what you can and can't do in your own home, folks. I hate to say it that way, but it's a fact of life, okay? So there are some states that they don't really even, if someone breaks into your house, and I watched a video, and it was from another country. It was their local law enforcement getting on on the news and saying, hey, if someone breaks in your house, let them do whatever you let them do what they want to do, so nobody gets hurt. Okay, that was the story there. Your property isn't worth someone losing their life over, yours or somebody else's. Okay, and I get that. Well, what if they want to break in and kidnap my kid? Well, let that with law enforcement. Let law enforcement, call the police. After they leave, call the police. They come in and, we could criminally process it if they do anything. They come in and, heaven forbid, they do something to your wife, Oh, we could prosecute that. They'll go to jail for life. Well, yeah, you could prosecute that. But this is why I love the good old US of A. Because we have freedoms, okay? Now, you have the freedom if you want to stand on the sidewalk in front of my house and call me whatever name you want. Great. You have that right. If you step foot on my property, I could ask you to leave. If you try to break in my house or try to hurt me and my family, I have the right to defend myself. Now, make sure you like and subscribe. We're on Spotify. We're on all podcast players, YouTube, Rumble, and then all social media, X, Instagram, Facebook, all of those too. Make sure you like and subscribe there. And if you have a comment on this subject, make sure you leave it, because I would be interested in reading other people's opinions on this, because this is kind of a touchy subject. So some states have what is called a duty to retreat. Some states have Castle Doctrine, okay? And we're going to kind of get into that a little bit here. So, and each state's a little bit different with what it is, what the requirements are, okay? So, Castle Doctrine, let's start there. This means you have the right to defend yourself in your home. Okay, that some people call it a stand your ground. So you'll hear that being thrown out. Oh, we're a stand your ground state. What that means is that state doesn't have a duty to retreat. So here's where I take from this. Just because you are in a stand your ground state doesn't necessarily mean you should always stand your ground, okay? It's really, those are the two that we're talking about when you're talking about home defense. And now we are talking about, of course, using force to stop somebody. Now, Castle Doctrine or stand your ground versus duty to retreat. Duty to retreat just means you have to try to escape before you try to do something like that. which means if you're sitting in your living room and the kitchen's behind you and someone kicks in through the front door in front of you, your first option should be, okay, I got to get away from this guy. That is what means duty to retreat, okay? Stand your ground means he breaks in and he's, you see a shotgun in his hand. You reach over to that little side pocket on that recliner that normally keeps your magazines, and your 1911, you pull that up and you take him out. And then you'll hear the people say, make sure he falls in, shoot him and then drag him in. Make sure, no, don't ever tamper with evidence. Okay. People I don't think quite understand what these two terms mean. Okay. If I'm sitting in a recliner and my feet are up and a guy comes through the front door and he already has a weapon in hand, or you see him starting to reach for something right away, yeah, technically you might be in I have a duty to retreat, but the caveat is can you retreat safely? Is that something that, I don't want to get shot in the back as I'm running away. That's not going to help any situation. So you got to keep in mind that even though it's a duty to retreat, it's been said, I've said it, I love the statement. Sometimes it would be better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Okay? And I would rather, in that situation, I would rather be able to defend myself rather than not to. And now Castle Doctrine doesn't mean, you're in the kitchen and some guy breaks in, you hear him come, starting to come through the living room. That doesn't mean, I get a charge. No, don't do that. That's dumb because you don't know what they have. So maybe that is when you need to fall back and do that. So just because you have Castle Doctrine or you have duty to retreat, it's a situational thing too. If I'm out in public and I see, a guy shooting at somebody and I'm far enough away, that doesn't mean, I'm standing your ground so I can go get in that and I'll take him out. No, don't do that. That almost always is your duty to retreat. Now, here's the difference. If that's my grandchild, my son, my daughter, my wife, my father, my mother, my sister, a family member, and I'm watching this guy go and do that, even though I have a duty to retreat, you also have a Good Samaritan laws out there too. I'm not going to want to see my sister's around the corner. I see the guy, he's getting ready to go kill my sister. Duty to retreat. Nice knowing you, see at your funeral. No, that's absurd and that's stupid. And that's another situation that I would rather go to trial than a funeral. That's my take on it. I'm not a lawyer. I would suggest talking to a lawyer before, if you have questions on that. I'd always check with a lawyer. I'm telling you what I would do. And I would think most reasonable people would do. So keep that in mind. Just because the law says X doesn't mean there are certain exceptions to that. There's almost always some exceptions to that. Now, when you're going through a lot of this stuff, if you are trained, you could explain yourself. That's what I would recommend. And I'm a big fan of when something like this happens and you have to defend yourself, defend your home. Make sure that when you call the police, you don't have that firearm on you anymore. You want to put it in a safe, accessible place for the police to retrieve it. They're going to probably retrieve your firearm. That's what's going to happen. So don't go try to, I'm going to lock it up in my safe because I got to keep it safe. No. In this situation, it's a little bit different, okay? And when you're at home versus in your car, there's a difference there. The reality is, and I see this all the time, people get upset when something happens. I'm sorry, if there's a guy coming down the street shooting people and you're in a car and you don't know who they are, drive away, okay? You could just drive away. Turn the other direction, go the opposite direction to his, go. Drive away. Now, if you're blocked in and there's nowhere for you to go, and there's no escape plan, well, that's a different story. So, you see, it's all situational. It's not cut and dry like some people like to say. You know, I'm in traffic and I could have escaped. Well, okay. If you could escape, that's what I would always recommend escaping. Now, I'm going to touch base because I see videos, especially in the climate that we've seen now. People trying to drive down the street, and some people are blocking a road, okay? And I will tell you, this is a touchy subject, okay? If they're kind of away from your windows and they're just standing and they're beating on your hood, yeah, they might do some damage, but that is not I don't feel that that's a life or death situation there, okay? Now, if they start to have weapons, rocks, sticks, banging on your windows, and now all of a sudden they have your car surrounded, what do you do? And this is I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because if you're out and I've got my pistol right here and I'm carrying concealed, right? And I'm out and about and all of a sudden, crap, I didn't realize this was going on here. I'm at a protest turning bad. They surround my car. There's no way I could defend myself from 5, 6, 7 angry mob. There's no way I can do that. I can't get out. I'm not going to get out because if they're already beating on my car and there's already a violence aspect in that. I hate to be in that situation. I hope I'm never in that situation. What do? Do you Castle Doctrine? Do you stand your ground and just wait for one of them to break their window and go, and then you shoot somebody? Do you say, well, I have a duty to retreat, so gas pedal, let's go, and then you run over a few people? If you find yourself in that situation, if you are truly scared and you are fearful for your life, make sure, I love cameras. Make sure you have a dash cam. Dash camera could be a huge savior. If they start to see a mob around your car and they're beating on it and you see fists and you see someone throwing rocks and stuff and you gun it to get out of, to save your life, call the police. When you get free, call the police, tell them what happened, and wait there. Okay? There's nothing that says that, I ran someone over and it's an unsafe situation, so let me just sit here and wait for the cops. That's not going to come out very well for you. Unfortunately, that isn't, technically, could you be leaving the crime scene? Yeah. If you get to a safe distance, and I would rather explain that in court and say, hey, I drove off because I was being attacked. They're trying to break my windows. I was in fear of my life. I thought they were going to kill me. I gunned it to get out of there. Yeah, I ran a couple people over because they were in the middle of the street and trying not to let me go. I thought I was going to die. I got away. When you get away, call the police. If the mob comes up with you, get further away. That's where I would recommend getting further and further away. And call the cops and say, hey, this is what happened. This is where it happened. They're chasing me, and I'm going to, I'm trying to get away from them. Technically, that crime scene now is scattered. And it happens all the time. It really does. No one is going to say, oh, some guy is attacking me here, so I'm going to call the police and stand here and let him further attack me or subject myself to further injury because I don't want to leave the crime scene. You know what I mean? To me, that's stupid. So it's a touchy subject, but just because you're in a stand your ground state doesn't mean you always have to stand your ground. Just because you're in a duty to retreat state doesn't mean that no matter what, you always have to retreat. It's not, the laws aren't built that way. So keep that in mind. Make good judgments. Remember that anytime you do something and you have to defend yourself in a court of law, you're going to have to be able to explain your actions on what a reasonable person would do. Okay? So a reasonable person isn't going to jump out of their car and start, shooting protesters on the sidewalk. Okay? Oh, they were screaming, they were yelling. So what? They have a First Amendment right. That's great. Just remember that if you have to explain your actions, make sure you are always doing the right thing. If you do the wrong thing, you're going to get torn apart. And I hate to say it, but even sometimes when you do the right thing, you're going to get torn apart. So it is better than the alternative. So, again, like, subscribe, follow on all our social media, YouTube, Rumble, and everywhere else. And best thing I do is stay safe.